It's a Friday edition of the Bold Republic Radio Show. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Now, normally it's only a Thursday when I do an interview with anyone from Wyoming Liberty Group, but Maureen Bader, Maureen, you just couldn't help yourself on this one, could you?
No, it's been such a busy week. I thought I just had to share it with you.
Yeah, that's fine here. You know, if something is so important that you just have to call in and get on, I'm all for it. What's going on out there?
Well, this week has been a busy week for corporate welfare in Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
On Wednesday, we had the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting in Casper. Their role was essentially to discuss the state's role in this, what the government tends to call economic development, which quite frankly can mean pretty much anything in the state. And so their main discussions during the morning anyway was a review of the Wyoming Business Council's programs, and in particular the Business Ready Community Program. And what that program does is give away money essentially sometimes to communities that's then funneled through to benefit private interests, and we can talk about some of those a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
And other times it's state money that goes to communities to build infrastructure, which at the end of the day sometimes also will directly benefit private industry. So essentially what the Wyoming Business Council does is funnel public money to private interests, which is your sort of classic example of.
Well, and what you just opened with there, I think you really nailed it, is that when they say that they're investing in the community, business investment, business diversity, they can mean anything when they're talking in general terms like that. And that includes giving money to their crony friends, which usually ends up coming right back to them.
Yeah, that's sort of the issue whenever the government starts talking about investment. It's not really talking about investment in the way that we believe it to be, and that's right. The manipulation of language and sort of language abuse, I call it, is a classic tactic of the left. You see that all the time, where the left uses a term like freedom or liberty, and they have a different definition of that. So when government talks about investment, it's not talking about investing in stocks and bonds and getting a return on investment that's measurable. They're talking about spending money for all kinds of fuzzy things like job creation, economic diversity, and stuff that can't really be measured in an objective way. And that's really what makes government so-called investment nothing at all, but rather just spending.
Okay, so the key buzzwords we're looking for is investment, diversity, to name a couple, opportunity. When they start using words, when their mouths are moving, basically. This is what you have to do.
Like that.
Yeah, all right. So now what specifically were they talking about this time? Do you have some specifics?
Yeah, so one of the things about the Wyoming Business Council, I don't know if citizens here understand, is that it's got about a $90 million budget each biennium. About 70 million is essentially given away. Right. That means it's got $35 million in handouts every single year, basically. So what they were talking about essentially they gave some background for the Wyoming Business Council. It's been around since 1998, but this Business Ready Community Program started in 2004, and they've actually given away about $318 million for 315 projects over that time. Now, one of the really, really big problems with corporate welfare is that it can hurt small companies. And Bruce Burns had a couple of comments. Senator Bruce Burns, he's from Sheridan, and one of his very first comment was, when we set up the Wyoming Business Council back in 1998, and in particular when the Business Ready Community Program started in 2004, the idea was to diversify the economy, and here we are again. I mean, because right now Wyoming is facing one of those deja vu all over again situations, just like back in 1986. So in 1986, the bottom fell out of the minerals industry. Jobs were being lost. People were leaving the state. It was a really, really, really difficult time. So what did the legislators do? Well, in their frenzy to try to do something about the recession, they actually were able to amend Wyoming's constitution. Now, the writers of Wyoming's constitution were very astute in trying to prevent future legislators from giving public money to private interests.
Right.
So there are two articles in particular. One is Article 3, Section 36, 36, which prohibits the appropriation to any entity that's not under complete control of the state. And then Article 16, and there are a couple of sections, but in particular Section 6, which prevents loans to private businesses in a nutshell. So what the Wyoming Business Council essentially took over part of the Amendment 4 program, and what the Business Ready Community Program is able to do because of this Amendment 4 is provide not only loans to private businesses, but what we're looking at now are some appropriations to entities that are not under complete control of the state. I mean, just to give you an idea of how notorious this Amendment 4 program was, people still talk about it today as, oh, the Amendment 4 program. That's just how particularly bad it was. But its first two appropriations of about $20 million, 40% of that was completely lost. And then the program sort of lost its punch. But of course, here we are again in almost exactly the same situation as 1986. And as I mentioned, deja vu all over again. Here we go again with these big handouts in the sort of desire to appear to be doing something, in particular in the run up to the next election.
Well, and what gets me is, I have no problem. Let's say in the town that I'm in, it's all pretty much one big industry here. It's an energy industry, mostly coal, but some of the others up here in Gillette. Well, if they want to diversify Gillette, fine, get together with your buddies, gather some investors together and diversify the economy. But they always seem to turn to the taxpayer money. And I guess that's because when you turn to people and ask them to invest, you have to talk them into it. And there needs to be some kind of ability to show that there's going to be a return on the investment. When you're using taxpayer money, you can just take it.
Basically, yeah, and take it and spend it. Take it and spend it for political reasons, not for economic reasons. Because obviously, an entrepreneur who's using his own money, if he just loses it, well, he's lost his livelihood. But a politician that uses taxpayer money, well, a lot of times he gets reelected. Yeah. Because the effects of that won't be felt until long after he's gone. And certainly that's what happened back in 1986. And here we are again in 2015, looking at very similar problems.
So besides you sitting there objecting to this, was anybody else there objecting to this?
Well, this is one of these classic cases. You've got concentrated benefits and dispersed costs. Yeah. So we had almost the entire room except me and a person named Kathy Ide, who's with the Campaign for Liberty in Casper, were there and essentially cheerleading on the legislators to help support the Wyoming Business Council and its continued use of taxpayer money to fund and benefit private interests. It was really pretty depressing, the whole thing. But the thing is that I kind of think about what Milton Friedman said one time, and I'm paraphrasing heavily here, and that was, I really don't expect anything to happen right now with what I'm saying right now. But when disaster comes, at least there'll be an alternative available. And that's sort of what really right now it's a runaway train we're facing. We've got this governor here in the state. He's a big government guy. He seems to think that government is the solution to all problems. So what do we have? We've got this corporate welfare thing spiraling out of control. He wants to expand Medicaid because it's the government who's going to solve the healthcare problems of people that can't afford it.
They're offering a bunch of free money to expand Medicaid. Something obviously, right?
Obviously, but most legislators, fortunately enough legislators last time, and hopefully again enough legislators this time, realize you can't depend on the federal government to continue funding things. We've got there's quite my colleague Charlie Katibi has mapped out the series of promises that have been reneged on by the federal government. And so what do we want to do with this Medicaid expansion? Do we really want to lure a bunch of people into a poorly run government program only to pull the rug out from under their feet later? Or do we want to have some real solutions using the private sector and private charities that are going to have a better outcome at the end of the day, and not to mention making some fundamental reforms to the way the health insurance market is run in this country, and government again is not going to be at the lead there. It's got to come from individuals.
Hey, I don't want to get us off on this as a topic. I just want to place a seed in your head to see if this germinates there. And me and germs. So I just thought, could we possibly tag Medicaid expansion, Medicare expansion, as corporate welfare of some kind? Is it possible to do it? Because if you could put that stigma on it, and of course it would have to be true, obviously, but.
I think Medicaid expansion and Medicare expansion is more government expansion. It's just getting government bigger and bigger because it's a government provision of health. And it's a government provision of health insurance, which means the government is pulling the string.
Okay, it's going to more government entities. It's not going to like private corporations.
Well, if you're going into the private hospital system, but again, what we've seen in other states that expanded Medicaid is that it has actually increased the number of emergency room visits.
Yeah.
So that means it's actually more expensive.
Yeah, they're losing
not
the
less.
off of that. Okay, just a thought of that. Okay, so once again, Maureen, I think what we take away from what you're giving us here with the whole corporate welfare thing is victory goes to those people who show up. And it sounds like at this meeting that you were at, the people who show up, once again, are the people who have their hands out for free money.
And if you thought the Economic Development Committee meeting was bad on Wednesday, you should have been at the State Loan and Investment Board meeting yesterday.
Oh, God.
Now, the State Loan and Investment Board is made up of the 5 elected officials. So the governor, secretary of state, auditor, treasurer, and the state superintendent of public education. The Wyoming Business Council brings these projects forward, and the SLIB board, so the SLIB board, the State Loan and Investment Board, is the one that essentially has to give the final okay. The problem is that they never say no to anything. They just rubber stamp everything. And you should have seen the crowd in this room, and I'm sure I was the only one. I was practically afraid to talk. Not that I had a chance, because when it came time to start, talking about the public input, all these people lined up at the podium, and they had maybe, 30, if not more, projects to work through. So there was no chance to say anything at all. I probably would have been run out of town.
Here's what it is. You're the only person in the room, Maureen, saying, no, I don't want free stuff. It's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, basically, and also to say that, it's just fundamentally wrong. I mean, corporate welfare causes so many problems. You've got a misallocation of resources. You've got business spending time on lobbying instead of making better products. You've got the transfer of wealth from average families to favored businesses. And the other thing you see a lot of is that people lining up for corporate welfare are people who are accustomed to manipulating the system. And this creates a very corrupting tie between government officials, politicians, and business leaders.
Yep, and they all go to the same cocktail parties. Maureen, thanks for keeping us up to date on this. Good to hear from you again.
Great. I've got a couple of articles up on our website, wyliberty.org. I hope people go there. And if you have more questions, please give us a call, 632-7020, area code 307.
See how good she's gotten at getting those plugs in there? Have a good weekend, Maureen.
You too, bye.